From vintage tones to the modern day best. From cheap pawn shop finds to dream rigs. This is Guitar Gab, the podcast where everything six-string rules the conversation. Hosted by Dan Goettel and Bigsby Shims. We're talking gear, pedals, pickups, amps, playing, collecting, tone chasing, guitar legends, and all the stories in between. Whether you're a bedroom player, touring musician, weekend jammer, or a full-on gear addict, pull up a chair, plug in, and turn it up. This is Guitar Gab.
Hey everyone, we are back. It is Dan Goettel. I'm here with Bigsby Shims and another episode of Guitar Gab, the podcast where we pretty much try not to digress too much, but talk about anything and everything guitar related. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Nice to see you and nice to get back into some guitar gear.
Yeah, we are focusing today on our three top pedals, our three must-haves, and in a way, our three grab-and-goes. If you got three, you got to get out. How did you say it last week? You got to put your thing in a gig bag?
Yeah, your buddies call you. We're doing a weekend jam. There's a backline amp there. Can you just grab some stuff and get in the car, throw it in your gig bag, and roll?
Yeah, so for me, this is a little interesting thing because as you know, while I have played and I have a lot of pedals, it's really hard to choose just three of my favorite kids when you have 100 and some kids.
True.
And I don't play out all that much anymore. You know, I still keep up with the gear and I still play a lot at home. But if I had to choose three, this was probably a little more tricky for me than it was for you because my choices will include some of my all-time faves in certain categories, but I really thought of it more of what three things, type of things, would I need if I only could choose three things.
Sure.
You know?
And we should also tell our listeners that due to our last podcast episode, we convinced ourselves to buy each buy a new pedal. So
That's right.
What did you end up with, Dan, from last week?
I got the DoD 280 compressor that you kind of talked about, or we talked about when you were bringing up your sleeper pedals.
And those are awesome. They actually have a little light bulb in there. So they're optical compressors, which a lot of the cool studio compressors have that same technology, some of the classics. But this thing sounds fantastic. It's my favorite. And you're really going to dig it.
Yeah. What do we say? We're not just the president. We're also clients.
We're also, yeah.
What did you get? What did you grab?
I went on the DoD train too.
That's fantastic.
So I had this one back in the day. In a moment of weakness, I got rid of it, so I had to rebuy it. This happened way too many times.
Of weakness, yeah.
More times than I'd like to admit, but it's the DoD 401B phaser, which a lot of people think, and the internet will tell you it's the base version. It's not. It's actually the same schematic as the 401, just the B was a later revision, and it's just different by a couple of resistors that I believe give the pedal more headroom. I think there may have been some problems with humbuckers, maybe distorting the transistors on the input if you hit it really hard. And I've noticed that before with some of those older phasers where you'll hear kind of this harsh clipping where it's chopping the top of the waveforms. And
I've had more than one MXR Phase 90 that did that.
Okay, yeah. And I think that's the reason for that script mod that people talk about online with the newer versus the original ones because that one... I'm going to really geek out here, but it's the R28 resistor, the R28 resistor mod. I think that's the one people maybe remove or for the newer ones to make them sound more like the old ones.
Nice. So interesting you talked 18 volt, and when we get into today's pedals, that's a thing I think we can digress on a little bit because every choice of mine can be run on 18 volts for more headroom.
More headroom.
Let's say right away so people don't fry their pedals. Not everyone can do this. Not every pedal can handle it, right?
It needs to say on the pedal, it'll say 9 to through 18 volts or something like that. Or if you're hip enough to look at a schematic, or you can even open it up and check out the components and see if they're rated for up to 18 volts, or really you want more just in case there's any spikes in the power.
Okay.
But yeah, generally speaking, 18 volts, you just get more headroom before distortion. I guess a little bit more dynamics. Okay. Meaning it doesn't feel as compressed, generally speaking, with higher voltage.
As you said, with humbuckers or more powerful pickups, that's a nice thing to have too, right?
Yeah, I think the pedal will give you more before it gives up the goods.
That's great. How do you want to do this? Do you want to swap pedal to pedal? Do you want to give your first three?
Yeah, if we go in order from guitar to the first pedal, I guess maybe we can each do one, and I'm happy to start off if you're cool with that.
Go ahead and first.
I think for me, I got to have a fuzz on there. I mean, I'm a fuzz guy. I love what fuzz does. All my favorite players from back in the day, the Jimmy Pages, Jimi Hendrix, David Gilmour, those guys all use the fuzz, and specifically the silicon transistor version of the fuzz face. That's the one for me that does it.
Now, I'm correct in saying if you have fuzz, you almost always should run it first. Is that correct?
I think with the old schools, absolutely.
Okay.
The new ones, they may have buffers. The more modern ones, I can't speak to whether they do anything to the sound. I'm not sure. But a traditional fuzz does want to see your guitar pickup first.
And that goes a long way into helping, because they're very dynamic, right? So if your guitar is just going in first, it's getting all of that dynamics in the input of the fuzz, which really helps it clean up.
Exactly. Yeah, it's dynamic. And also the beauty of it, I think, is the slightest change in your volume knob really kind of changes how the pedal sounds. It changes the character of the fuzz a bit. Like you said, if you go down enough, you can get some really sparkly clean tones, which a lot of people know about. But yeah, for me, the silicon fuzz face, there's an aggressiveness, there's a mid-range sort of pop that it really gives you. And it's a nice change of character from a regular distortion or overdrive pedal. Maybe your fuzz isn't your only dirty on there, but to have a different flavor, it's nice to change it up because it really makes you play different. You get a ton of sustains. You can get all those violin tones. Eric Johnson being the perfect example of a silicon fuzz face guy. David Gilmour, I think, on Dark Side, some of those tunes, I believe, early to mid-70s.
Big Muff Ram's Head, right? Was that his one?
At some point, but I believe Time, Money, from what I've heard, those were the fuzz face.
Oh, okay.
And then my all-time favorite is Band of Gypsies, Jimi Hendrix. I mean, that's to me, that's the number one all-time best guitar sound ever.
Man, that tone, it's fantastic, no doubt.
It's a monster powerful thing and that's sort of what the silicon fuzz face does. Just this sort of punch in the face of mass.
I really wrestled. Fuzz was in my head, and it may or may not have made it into my three, but it's not my first. One of the things I know from my experience is fuzz can be finicky. And if I had to grab and go and I had to have three things that I knew I could use, sometimes fuzz can be affected by temperature, or if it gets jostled in the thing, in the travel, whatever. And I have a bunch of old fuzzes, great, like the Big Cheese from Love Tone and stuff, really well-made hard-head pedals. But I've had them at times where I couldn't dial in the same sound from day to day.
And really the germanium types, which are the earlier versions, are the ones that are temperature sensitive. And that was part of the reason for the silicon development, stability.
Okay.
You had a way more stable version of a transistor, different sound for sure, but in the ballpark. And to me, those are a lot more versatile.
Fantastic. All right, so I went a little different. I tend to play more rhythm. I also really, really sort of like to start off with, especially if I'm playing clean, with a compressor. And it's funny you mentioned that the DoD is an optical compressor. I have a bunch of compressors that I think all kind of do different things, a bunch of pedals. I actually have a rack compressor too. I went through this fix phase where he used a rack, so I thought that's what I needed.
You can't fit that in a gig bag, Dan, so it's not allowed.
So basically, I started with my favorite compressor. It is an optical. It is made by Diamond, and it is their CPR1, where I got into this a million years ago. It's normally a yellow, big sort of box.
Yes.
But they made a black box, a white box. They made different, seafoam green for a while.
I think those are called colorways these days, Dan.
Oh, okay. Sorry. See, there you go. I'm not hip with the lingo. But I love it. It's subtle, but you can still get some serious compressed Andy Summers compression, some serious country compression out of it if you want to do it. It's nice. It also just kind of gives your signal a really nice boost going into the next thing. It was, until the DoD arrived, the only optical pedal compressor that I had. And I may not like it as much as the DoD when I play with that, but it's the most unique thing. It's not too much. It can handle just about anything. It's only got 3 knobs, and it's really, really easy to kind of dial in compression. And here's the thing. So Diamond, the original Diamond company out of Canada, went out of business that made the big box CPR1. It's now back in business, a Canadian company, Back Diamond, is making the pedals, and they're making smaller scale versions of it. Their CPR1 compressor now also it has a little more EQ on it.
Cool.
So you can control the sound a little better, and it takes up less space. So if you wanted to put 4 pedals on your grab and go, you could have that first.
Easy.
Yeah, I really dug it. And I thought whether it's clean or dirty, it's a good way to start the signal.
That's a good choice because I have noticed if you are going back and forth between clean and dirty, there is something about, you get that natural compression from dirt boxes. Yep. When you start playing clean again, it sort of gets lost in the mix. So I feel like that's actually really where a compressor pedal shines, is in a clean setting.
Yep. It really defines notes, too. If you're doing some busy, clean work, notes kind of punch. And you got to be careful because you can get muddy, right? Like if you dial in too much, you can kind of lose the mud with a band situation. If you keep it a little more open, which this thing is really nice. It has a dip switch inside, which really opens it up if you're using humbuckers with it. Not that I like to open pedals and mess with dip switches. I'm not that guy. But it's there. And it controls the frequency a little bit inside. And you can bypass the EQ altogether inside in the old ones as well. Really nice handmade pedal. It was great.
Sounds super versatile, yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Cool. If I'm going on to number 2, I'm going dirt again.
Okay.
And this one is the OCD.
Oh, yeah.
And specifically...
beloved by many.
It is. Yeah. It fell out of favor. There was some static.
Yeah. I mean, you know what, though? Full Tone makes great pedals. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
The pedals are great.
Yeah. OCD, if you're not a fan, I would really suggest the 18 volt. This is where 18 volt really transforms the pedal. It sounds really good at the regular 9 volt, but 18 volt, if you're a person who doesn't like drive pedals because of the natural compression and kind of it changes your dynamic range to a much narrower box, then the 18 volts becomes a whole other thing of touch sensitivity. And you can really just, with how hard you pick, you can really go from clean to slightly overdriven to very aggressive just with a little bit of picking dynamics.
So you're putting fuzz in front of drive, stacking them. Do you want to talk a second about how stacking them works?
Yeah, I can touch on that briefly. This is the way I look at it, is if you think Jimi Hendrix, perfect example, Fillmore shows, Band of Gypsies, he's got that Marshall cooking. The Marshall back then, it's not crazy heavy distortion, it's sort of a rhythm sound, maybe think AC/DC, that kind of thing. So it is broken up, but not crazy. So if that's your OCD, then your fuzz in front of it is Jimmy hitting that overdriven amp, and it just sort of brings the mids even higher. You have that violin sustain. You just hold that note for days.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful. So the way to control it is you have your volume knob, let's say, on a 7-ish.
Okay.
Right? So you have a sort of a rhythm sound kind of dialed in with your OCD.
Unlike me until I was 30, where my volume knob, I didn't even need it.
Same.
I don't know, on the guitar.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. And then if you're there, then you can dial in the fuzz. Otherwise, if you're at 10, they just sort of swallow each other up and it kind of folds into itself and it's softer somehow. It makes no sense.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's a nice little trick. You can do one or the other, or you can stack them.
I should also say that the Diamond compressor, you can run at 18 volts and it's great. So like we talked about the pedals that do it, it opens it up more like you just said as well. So
very cool.
And that said, my second pedal is also dirt, not fuzz, but clipping distortion. And I really wrestled with this because I like a lot of distortions. I at first thought I'm going to put my old Rat pedal on there, the Proco Rat. And it's great, but it's really specifically great. And I have a couple of different variants from other pedal makers that use the LM308 chip or that style of distortion that Rat uses. But I just thought to myself, unless it was a specific amp that I was going into with a specific guitar, I may not get as much a single kind of distortion out of it as I'd want. So I said no to that.
As well loved as the Rat is, I almost feel like it's undersold a little bit.
Oh, okay.
I think the Rat is not appreciated. Rat's one of the all-time classics.
I think it is.
More people need to play Rats for sure.
That is true. Hartman makes a pedal, or made a pedal years ago when they made pedals, and he did a really great replica of the Rat, the LM308 it was called. And I remember telling somebody, I was playing it through a small little Champ, and with single coils, and it sounded so thick and big. And I was well, it's basically in the Rat family. And they're like, why would anybody want to make a copy of a Rat? And I was like, oh, okay.
Because they're awesome.
They are. I think so. But that said, it just wasn't versatile enough for me to have. I only have one dirt pedal in my 3 pedals.
Okay.
And then I have a big love of the Nobles ODR1. For those that don't know, it's kind of coming around out of prominence, but when most dirt pedals have a nice hump in the mid-range, i.e. Tube Screamers or these the green boxes out there, this had more of a very flat EQ, maybe even a little hump in the bass. Because of the flat EQ, it was made overseas. It was made in Japan, designed in 92. It really didn't catch on for most players except for the guys in Nashville, the Tim Pierces, the Tom Bukovacs. They loved this pedal, and a buddy of mine here in New York turned me on to it, God, 25 years ago. And the enclosures were horrible. I mean, these things were made. I still have my early 2000s one in its case. I'll call it its box. And it just is this plastic. It looks like it'd be hanging in a checkout line at Walmart.
Like bubble wrap.
It's horrible. and so they had to get rehoused. They had to, a lot of things would happen. Their sort of tone switch, it was just one, you dial it in. But when you got it in, the thickness and the openness of your dirt on your guitar was still there. I really liked it. But here's my caveat. The guy, Tai Takabana, who created this pedal in 92, went out on his own, and he has a company called Nordland. And he kind of sends it out from his own company, from his website, Nordland, his new, better version of this pedal. Same guts. He's the creator, exact same thing. He even says on the website, the Nobles that you can buy today is the same one that he designed in 92. So it's still the same circuit, but his is just maybe better made. It's in a heavier enclosure, and it has a couple of more things. A bass cut. It has a compression controller, which keeps it open. It's hard to describe, but it's the one that I would pick is the Nordland ODR-C, but it's the same circuit as the Nobel's ODR-1.
The old school.
Yeah. And so for my dirt, that's what I would do. I think that's pedal number 2 for me. And it can run at 18 volts, and it can handle a lot. So it can go in there a lot.
I love that because I've become a recent adopter to the Nobles. I actually bought a kit and built one myself.
Oh, nice.
Which sounds fantastic. Another one running at 18 volts. It's even better at 18 volts. And you and I had the fortune of being able to do a little shootout a while back where we had maybe 4 variants of it. We were running them at 18 and 9. And I think that your choice, the ODR-C, I think out of the box, that was the champ. For sure. Yeah. So
there's a lot more going on with it. There's a few more knobs on it, and there's a few more things that you can dial in and out. But once you get it, how it's working, and it's versatile enough where if you went on the road and you brought 2 guitars, say you brought a Strat and a Les Paul, and that was your only dirt, you can use it for both and get really good sounds out of both, just knowing how to maybe dial something back here or something back there. So
yeah, and it is a different flavor of overdrive, something that you almost kind of have to get used to because it is very touch sensitive.
Oh, yeah.
I guess it doesn't go into drive as quickly, I feel like, as most drive pedals.
Explanation. That's right.
Yeah.
And I feel like you can make mistakes with it. When I was describing the EQ and you made one, how would you describe it? Like, is it you can muddy your sound with the bass easily if you don't know what you're doing, but you also love that sort of keeping the low end when you're dialing it in, right?
I think the challenge is that as guitar players, we get so used to, and I think it's the nature of the circuits, we get so used to drive pedals removing bass because in a circuit, if you let too much bass throughout the circuit of the pedal, it can kind of do strange things. It'll overdrive too quickly or clip too quickly inside there. So I think generally a lot of those pedals, the first thing they do is they cut bass from your guitar.
Sure.
And if they have to, they'll add bass back at the end.
Okay.
That's probably the first hump to get over with those ODR style pedals. But once you can embrace that, hey, it's not cutting my bass and I can still cut through a mix, it actually feels like you have a little more meat behind you when you're playing.
Yeah, it does. That's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So it can feel really good to play those 70s rock riffs on the low 3 strings with the Nobles. Right. It just feels badass under your fingers.
And I'll tell you, it cleans up well too. Like it's not just that sort of, sometimes you throw an overdrive pedal in there and you get the really compressed, really distorted overdrive. And there's plenty of uses for that. But this stays sort of wide open or stays, the sound has got a big spectrum in it. When you clean it up, you don't lose that. And when you dirty it up with your guitar volume, it still stays open and big. It doesn't always just compress down if you dial it that way.
But you can't talk about that pedal without talking about Tom Bukovac. Yeah. He's sort of the main proponent. I'm just going to semi-quote him, which the trick is you have your sound, you like it. You turn the drive all the way down on the ODR1, you engage the ODR, and then you can basically match the EQ, your bass and your treble. You can match it, and then just turn up the drive to touch. So it should sound almost exactly the same with the pedal on than with it off, and then you can just add as much overdrive as you'd like.
That's exactly right. It does not at all, well, I'm sure minorly, but it really doesn't change your tone at all. It just dirties it up.
Yeah, love it.
All right, what you got next?
The last one's a little bit of a trick. I put a little trickaroo on you here. This brand of pedals, TC Electronic, they really had a great tech thing that some reason a lot of people don't know about, which is their tone print technology.
Okay.
And essentially what it allows you to do is if you're plugged into any of their tone print pedals, you can, with your iPhone, iPad, you can essentially point with their app, you can point the phone. Tell me if this all makes sense.
It does.
You can point the phone at your guitar pickups, and it beams like a fax machine kind of data.
Okay.
That kind of weird sound into your pickups through the cable into the pedal, and you can change presets that way. So they have famous players presets. You can have different patches essentially.
So this is a multi-effects pedal?
It's not. They do have those, but my pick is specifically the flashback mini delay. So it's a tiny mini pedal.
Okay.
It's your delay pedal, and it only will hold one delay patch at a time. But the cheat is I have the phone, and I can make that thing an Echoplex. I can make it a Memory Man. And then the extra cheat on top of that is because it's a delay, you can actually get chorus sounds and flange sounds out of it. So it's really, I'm getting modulation. So I'm getting modulation and delay sort of for the price of one. I'm getting all those sounds.
Is it super expensive to do all that?
Tone print stuff is it's just free. The app is all free.
Oh, okay.
And I think you can get those used. They're very inexpensive.
Wow.
I mean,
and
they're tiny. They work well. The tech is great. If you really want to dive in, they have a tone print editor, which I've done. So I've taken some classic analog delays I really love, lined them up side by side. And then with the editor, you can actually create a patch and essentially clone the sound of anything. Yeah.
So you can go as deep into this thing as you want, really.
You can, yeah. And you can store your own patches, and I'll have all those presets from all these players on there that you can go through and go nuts.
Knowing my attention span, I'm not sure if this is the pedal for me, but I feel like now I want to change my last one to this because it sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's a good one. And although it seems like you could have that option paralysis, which I admittedly am very prone to, I find that you end up parking on a sound.
Okay.
So you might go through, and then once you're feeling it, it's like, okay, I'm going to leave that in the pedal board. But I feel like for a challenge like we're doing here, that would be great to grab and go, because say, for example, you're in a setting where you're going, a little modulation on my repeats, like a Memory Man type of thing.
Sure.
And boom, you have it. Or you go,
that's
what?
Cool.
This would be cool. I really need a chorus right now. You have a chorus or a delay that has a flange on it, or the 2290. They basically have all the vintage classic delays. They're all in there as presets.
And now I've seen yours. It doesn't take up a lot of space.
Yeah, it's the tiny, I believe, the 1590 A size enclosures. It's the standard mini pedal size.
That's fantastic. Moving on to mine, I will say this. I also went TC Electronics. Well, I started at TC Electronics because I also wanted to have modulation. And I used another vintage pedal that it's now reissued, but the 80s, 90s stereo chorus flange TC Electronics pedal, famously used again by Eric Johnson and some other players. It was really the first high-tech, high-dollar, well-made pedal that I got. I think I said last episode I had gotten an Ibanez flanger and chorus. This did them both. And then I said, wait a minute, a grab and go, this is a problem because it's hardwired with a plug. It's like you can't use a battery, and even the reissues, you can't use a battery. You can plug it into your own power supply, but there's no battery option on the thing, and I thought that was a problem. And then also, again, until it was discontinued in the early 2000s, all of them had a hardwired plug in the back. So it's like,
wall wart, or was
plug.
It like a lamp?
Like a lamp,
two-prong?
like a lamp plug in the back. Yeah, it's like you've got an old toaster you're bringing to your gig or something, And it sounded great. I loved them. I still do. Luckily, I kept it. Of all the ones you get rid of, I have that. Then I thought, okay, so there's so many newer options that do that thing that'll give you chorus and flange and modulation like that. And so I kind of moved away from it, and I went to a pedal maker that I think is phenomenal called Strymon. And Strymon makes a lot of pedals, and they've discontinued a lot of pedals. They make some for a while and discontinue it. And in my research for this week's episode, I realized that the one that I like, the Orbit, which was really a flange, but it also could get wonderful chorus sounds because, as you mentioned earlier, it's really kind of the same thing.
Yep.
It is now not in their brand new release, but the technology that they used in that pedal is in other things. But the one that I picked as my third pedal was a Strymon Orbit. Still plenty of them out there. When I was looking on sites, there's still new ones out there. So you can still buy them brand new. You can buy them used. It sounds great. The thing with the Strymons that I found, whatever you get a Strymon pedal to do, it does that to the biggest and best of its ability.
Yeah.
Like this thing, you can get, it sounds like you're listening to robots. You can get these weird sounds. You can get lush chorus sounds. They take a little effort to look at it. The other thing that's nice is if I was grabbing this to go for a gig and I just wanted a chorus sound, I can store one preset that's a chorus sound that I can step on a button and that always comes up.
Okay.
And then I can use the pedal for anything else I want, dialing flanges down, dialing something in, and I could just have my standard sort of thick, unobtrusive chorus with just stepping on a button.
Your fallback.
Yeah,
that's pretty
right.
cool. I consider the Strymon Flint, which is another cool one. That's a 2-in-1 with the reverb and the tremolo. Those sound great too. So Strymon is doing good things.
I would have used that, except I should say that in my head, the backline amp that I was going to be playing through definitely had reverb.
Yeah, let's assume that.
Yeah, that's right. So, I didn't need the reverb, even though the Flint reverb probably sounds a lot better than some backline amps reverbs, depending on what amp you're playing through. But yeah.
I think we're looking good, Dan. I think those are very cool.
So I got a little wrinkle. I'm calling it a little input from the outside, but I have a friend of mine who is a working musician. He flies all over to do gigs and studio gigs and play with various bands. He's got his own project that he's got a new record out. His name is Mark Dunn. He's based down south, but I know he plays in Nashville and Atlanta and out west. And I asked him, I said, can you give me a quick rundown? Because he's a guy that's got to grab and go at the moment's notice. What would you use?
Yep.
So he sent me this quick little missive. I thought it'd be interesting to get a working man's take on this as a guy this is what he does for a living. He said he would start with the Dunlop CAE wah. Totally the best one on the market. He has 3. The Dunlop EVH comes in second place, but he just thinks that the CAE is the best.
Okay, nice.
I don't use enough wah, and of course that would have to be first, right? You got to put the wah first.
Yeah.
And then he went with the full tone OCD. And he said, if the provided amp has a gain stage, the OCD can be used as a pretty great boost with a little extra grind. If the provided amp is clean, then the OCD absolutely covers any amount of musical gain you would need, from broken up country loads to scooped mid-metal. In fact, it gets about as metal as you can get. And then he said for his delay, he'd use the Digitech hardwired digital delay. He thinks it's absolutely as functional as it gets. He loves it. But he said if he didn't have that, an old Boss DD, specifically the DD2, is what he'd have last because it sounds great.
Cool. All right. Yeah. So we're in the ballpark of on the front lines.
Well, I think you do it more than I do. So I think you understood what you're going to need on the front lines a little more. But yeah, so the OCD is a big fave. And there's a bunch of different versions, if I'm right? Is that correct?
Yeah, there is. Everyone has their preferences. It's funny. He was always updating the pedals as things were going along. Same deal with the full drive. Mm-hmm. But I remember not being able to help myself. So this must be better. And I bought whatever a later version was. I hated it. So returned it immediately.
Stick with what you like.
Exactly. Once you have it, roll with it.
I love it. So I want to say thanks to Mark Dunn. You can check out his stuff at markdunnguitar.com. His newest CD, I think, is called Top Gear. Great stuff. I want to say thanks to you, Biggs. Another fun episode. Next week, it's going to be really fun for you because we're going to go down this rabbit hole of delay.
Yes. We're both delay fans. I'm more of a delay fan maybe just because I'm not a reverb fan, so delay is kind of my thing.
Yeah.
And we're going to do our 3 favorites, so not necessarily the best or the must-haves, but the ones that we really love and bond with.
Yeah, I can't wait. There's a lot to get into. We could do 7 shows on delay.
Okay.
This is a good focus.
Cool.
So there we go. More Guitar Gab. Thanks for tuning in. More to come soon. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Guitar Gab, the podcast where we talk about anything and everything guitar. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Watching on YouTube, hit like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Be sure to visit guitargabpodcast.com for all our episodes and exclusive extras. And if you have feedback, topic ideas, questions, or even corrections, drop us a line at feedback@guitargabpodcast.com. Thanks for hanging out with us, and until next time, keep playing.